Why do some people seem to attract success, happiness, and peace effortlessly, while others struggle for years with the same problems? And how can you shift your life starting today, not tomorrow or someday, but this very day, using the hidden power within your own mind? The answer lies in the art of manifestation, the practice of aligning your thoughts with the life you desire. Dr. Joseph Murphy, in his classic book, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, once said, "The law of your mind is the law of belief." This means whatever you deeply believe, whether it's success, love, or failure, you will attract it into your life. Your outer world is simply a mirror, reflecting your inner thoughts and convictions. If you believe you're unworthy, life will show you reasons to agree. But if you believe you are capable, deserving, and guided by a higher power, the universe responds to that faith. In this video, you will learn how to use manifestation to change your life, starting today, not by wishful thinking, but by understanding how your subconscious mind works. You'll discover how to plant powerful thoughts, repeat affirmations that shift your beliefs, and take inspired action that draws opportunities to you naturally. You'll see how your mind is the true engine of change, and how one simple shift in belief can open doors that once seemed locked. Your new life begins the moment you decide to believe it is already yours. You stand at this very moment at the threshold of transformation. And I tell you with absolute certainty that the power to change your life completely exists within you right now, not tomorrow, not next week, but today, this very day, this very hour. The great truth that has been hidden in plain sight throughout the ages is simply this: your thoughts are not mere whispers in the darkness of your mind. They are creative forces. They are the architects of your reality. They are the invisible hands that shape every circumstance, every relationship, every condition in your life. When you truly grasp this principle, when you allow it to penetrate not just your conscious mind, but the deeper recesses of your subconscious, you begin to understand that manifestation is not some mystical practice reserved for the spiritually gifted. It is your natural birthright. It is the fundamental law by which you have been operating all along, whether you knew it or not. A woman once said to Dr. Joseph Murphy that her life was a series of disappointments, that nothing ever worked out the way she hoped, that she must be cursed or unlucky by nature, and he asked her a simple question: "What do you think about most of the day?" She paused, reflected, and admitted that she spent most of her waking hours anticipating problems, expecting difficulties, rehearsing in her mind all the ways things could go wrong. You see, she was manifesting with perfect precision. She was creating exactly what she focused upon. She was a master manifester, creating misery instead of miracles. This is the great paradox. You cannot not manifest. You are always manifesting something. The question is whether you are doing so consciously or unconsciously, deliberately or by default. Your subconscious mind is like fertile soil. It accepts any seed you plant within it, whether that seed is one of abundance or poverty, health or sickness, joy or sorrow, and it grows that seed with absolute impartiality, without judgment, without questioning whether this is what you truly want. Therefore, if you wish to change your life today, you must begin by changing the seeds you are planting. You must become vigilant over the thoughts you think, the words you speak, the images you hold in your mind's eye. The ancient wisdom tells us that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And this is not poetic metaphor. This is literal truth. This is the mechanism by which your inner world creates your outer world. This is the bridge between the invisible realm of thought and the visible realm of form and experience. The moment you awaken to the truth that your consciousness is the only creative power in your life, you cease to be a victim of circumstances and become a conscious creator of your destiny. And this transition can happen instantaneously, not through years of study or decades of practice, but through a single shift in understanding that pierces through the veil of illusion you have been living behind. Your subconscious mind does not argue with you. It does not debate the validity of your thoughts. It simply accepts as true whatever you impress upon it with feeling and conviction, And then it proceeds to bring into manifestation the exact equivalent of those mental impressions. A man told Dr. Joseph Murphy that he had been trying to manifest prosperity for years without success, that he had read all the books, attended all the seminars, repeated all the affirmations, yet his financial situation remained unchanged or even worsened. Dr. Murphy asked him to examine honestly what he really believed, deep down, beneath all the affirmations and positive thinking, and the man confessed that whenever he tried to visualize abundance, a voice in his mind would immediately say, "Who are you kidding? This will never work for you. You've always been poor. You'll always be poor." Here was the problem laid bare. He was planting seeds of prosperity on the surface, while deeper down he was watering the roots of poverty, consciousness, and the subconscious mind. Being utterly faithful to the dominant impression was manifesting the poverty he truly believed in, rather than the prosperity he merely hoped for. This is why so many people fail at manifestation, not because the law doesn't work, but because they are working against themselves. They are sending mixed signals to their subconscious mind, like a confused passenger who tells the taxi driver to take them north while insisting they want to go south. You must understand that it is not enough to think positive thoughts occasionally or to repeat affirmations half-heartedly while your dominant mental attitude remains negative, doubtful, fearful. The subconscious responds to the habitual thinking patterns, the emotional convictions, the deep-seated beliefs that color your perception of reality from morning until night. Therefore, if you want to change your life today, you must begin to monitor your thoughts as carefully as a gardener monitors his garden, weeding out the thoughts of limitation, lack, and fear the moment they appear, replacing them immediately with thoughts of abundance, possibility, and faith. This requires vigilance. Yes, this requires effort, but I assure you that this effort is infinitely more productive than the effort you currently expend worrying, complaining, and accepting conditions you do not want. The subconscious mind operates on a very simple principle that, once understood, transforms everything. It moves toward whatever you dwell upon with feeling, and accepts as true, regardless of whether that thing brings you joy or suffering, success or failure, health or disease. This is simultaneously the most empowering and most sobering truth you will ever encounter, because it means that you have been creating your life all along through the habitual thoughts you think and the beliefs you hold, even the beliefs you are not consciously aware of holding. A woman said to Dr. Joseph Murphy that she desperately wanted to find a loving partner, but every relationship she entered turned toxic and painful, and she wondered if she was somehow cosmically doomed to be alone. He guided her through an examination of her self-talk, her internal dialogue about relationships, and together they discovered that she carried a deep belief inherited from her mother that all men are untrustworthy, that love always leads to heartbreak, that vulnerability is dangerous. She had been unconsciously manifesting the very thing she consciously feared, attracting partners who confirmed her subconscious expectations, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy that reinforced her limiting beliefs. Once she recognized this pattern, once she saw clearly how her own mind had been sabotaging her desires, she began the work of reprogramming her subconscious, impressing upon it new beliefs about love, trust, and partnership, and within months her entire experience of relationships transformed. You see, the subconscious cannot tell the difference between a real experience and one vividly imagined with feeling. This is why visualization works. This is why mental rehearsal is so powerful, because when you imagine something with sensory detail and emotional involvement, your subconscious accepts it as real and begins to create the outer conditions to match the inner picture. This is not fantasy. This is not wishful thinking. This is the science of mind, the ancient art of impressing the subjective mind with the states you wish to experience. Right now, in this very moment, your subconscious is working tirelessly to manifest the equivalent of your dominant mental states, your habitual thoughts, your consistent emotional patterns. If you are predominantly worried, it manifests worrisome situations. If you are predominantly confident, it manifests confirming circumstances. If you habitually expect good things flow to you with increasing frequency and ease. Therefore, the question is not whether you should use your mind to create your life, because you are already doing so every moment of every day. The question is whether you will do so consciously and deliberately, or unconsciously and haphazardly. There is a technique so simple yet so profound that when practiced consistently, it can revolutionize your entire existence. And this technique is the practice of assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, of living mentally in the state you desire to experience physically, of thinking from the end rather than of the end. Most people make the mistake of looking at their current circumstances and using those circumstances as the basis for their thoughts and feelings. They see lack and feel poor. They see sickness and feel anxious, and they see limitation and feel trapped. But this is backwards. This is giving power to the outer world, when all power resides in the inner world of consciousness. A man told Dr. Joseph Murphy that he wanted to start a successful business but had no capital, no connections, no apparent opportunities. And he felt discouraged by these facts. Dr. Murphy explained to him that these facts, while currently true, were simply the outpicturing of his past thinking, his previous mental states crystallized into present conditions, and that if he continued to react to these conditions with feelings of discouragement and impossibility, he would perpetuate them indefinitely. Instead, he instructed the man to spend time each day, particularly before sleep, when the subconscious is most receptive, imagining that the business was already successful, feeling the satisfaction of serving customers, experiencing the joy of financial freedom, sensing the pride of accomplishment, and to persist in this practice regardless of what the outer circumstances looked like. The man committed to this practice, and as he did so, his entire attitude began to shift. Opportunities he had not noticed before suddenly appeared. Connections were made seemingly by coincidence. Resources materialized from unexpected sources, and within 18 months the business was not only launched but thriving beyond his initial vision. This is the power of assumption. This is the magic of living in the end. This is what it means to walk by faith and not by sight. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled and persist in that assumption, you impress upon your subconscious mind a new pattern, a new blueprint, and the subconscious, being the faithful servant that it is, begins immediately to rearrange your world to conform to this new pattern. Your outer world must reflect your inner world. This is law. This is principle. This is the immutable relationship between consciousness and manifestation. Therefore, stop giving your attention to what is and begin giving your attention to what you want to be. Stop reacting to current conditions and start acting from the state of your fulfilled desire. Stop being a thermometer that merely registers the temperature and become a thermostat that sets the temperature. The practice of gratitude is not merely a pleasant spiritual exercise or a way to feel momentarily better about your life. It is a powerful manifestation technique that shifts your entire vibrational frequency and opens the channels through which your good can flow to you. Because when you are grateful, you are acknowledging the presence of good. You are affirming abundance rather than lack. You are impressing upon your subconscious mind the conviction that you are blessed and favored and surrounded by infinite possibilities. Many people make the mistake of believing they will be grateful when their desires manifest, when they get the job, when they meet the partner, when they achieve the goal. But this is the inverse of how the law works, because the feeling of gratitude must come first. The inner state precedes the outer condition. The consciousness of having creates the experience of receiving. A woman said to Dr. Joseph Murphy that she had been praying for healing from a chronic ailment, but felt only frustration because the healing had not yet manifested, and her prayers had become complaints, recitations of what was wrong, demands that God fix her situation immediately. Dr. Murphy taught her that this approach was actually reinforcing the condition she wanted to eliminate, because by focusing on the illness with negative emotion, she was impressing it more deeply into her subconscious mind. He instructed her instead to give thanks for her healing even before it appeared in physical form, to feel grateful for the perfect health that existed already in the invisible realm of mind, to bless her body and appreciate it for all the functions it performed perfectly, even while some functions were impaired. She began this practice reluctantly at first, but as she persisted, something remarkable happened. Her entire relationship to her body changed. The anxiety and resentment dissolved. Peace filled her mind, and gradually, steadily, the symptoms began to diminish until complete healing was achieved. When you give thanks for something before it manifests, you are operating from faith. You are declaring that you already possess it in consciousness. You are claiming your good before it appears in form, and this act of claiming, this assumption of possession, this grateful acknowledgement of the answered prayer, impresses the subconscious so powerfully that manifestation becomes inevitable. Start today, right now, giving thanks for the things you desire, as though they were already yours. Feel the gratitude in your heart. Let it fill your entire being. Maintain this grateful state throughout the day, regardless of contrary appearances, and watch as your world rearranges itself to match your new consciousness. Your imagination is not a frivolous faculty for daydreaming or escaping reality. It is the most powerful tool you possess for reshaping reality. For your imagination is the workshop of your mind, where all things are fashioned before they manifest in the material world, where invisible thoughts take form, where formless desires crystallize into mental images that your subconscious mind accepts as instructions for what to create in your experience. When you imagine something vividly, when you see it in your mind's eye with clarity and detail, when you add to that mental picture the feeling and conviction that it is real, you are not engaging in fantasy. You are engaging in creation. You are using the same power by which all things come into being. Because everything that exists in the physical world existed first as an image in someone's imagination. Every building, every invention, every work of art, every human achievement began as an invisible picture held in consciousness. A man told Dr. Joseph Murphy that he felt foolish sitting in his small apartment, visualizing himself living in a beautiful home by the ocean, that it seemed like childish pretending, while that reality kept intruding on his visualization, reminding him of his actual circumstances. Dr. Murphy explained to him that what he called reality was simply the past made visible, the crystallization of his former thoughts and beliefs, and that if he continued to bow to this so-called reality, if he allowed current conditions to dictate his mental images, he would remain trapped in those conditions forever, endlessly recreating the past, never breaking free into the new possibilities that existed as potential in his imagination. He encouraged the man to persist in his visualization, to treat it not as fantasy but as the blueprint he was impressing upon his subconscious mind, to give it the same weight and authority he gave to his physical senses, to believe in the reality of the invisible more than the reality of the visible. The man committed to this practice, spending time each morning and evening dwelling in his imaginal house by the ocean, walking through its rooms, feeling the ocean breeze, hearing the waves, experiencing the peace and beauty of that environment. And after some months of faithful practice, a series of events unfolded that seemed miraculous, but were simply the outworking of mental law. An unexpected job offer in a coastal city, a favorable housing opportunity, circumstances aligning in ways he could not have orchestrated consciously, until one day he stood in his new home by the ocean, the physical manifestation of what had first existed only in his imagination. This is available to you right now, this creative power of imagination, this ability to impress upon your subconscious mind the images of what you desire to experience. And your subconscious will work day and night to bring those images into manifestation, arranging circumstances, attracting opportunities, guiding you through intuition, opening doors you did not know existed, until what you have faithfully imagined becomes what you physically experience. The words you speak are not merely sounds that dissipate into the air. They are creative forces that carry power to build up or tear down, to bless or to curse, to heal or to harm, because your words are expressions of your thoughts, and your thoughts are the causative factors in your life. Therefore, your words are seeds you plant not only in the minds of others, but most importantly, in your own subconscious mind, which hears everything you say and accepts your words as declarations of truth about yourself and your world. If you habitually speak words of lack, limitation, difficulty, and complaint, you are programming your subconscious mind to create more of these conditions. You are literally calling into existence the very things you claim not to want. You are using your creative power against yourself rather than for yourself. A woman said to Dr. Joseph Murphy that she could not understand why her health continued to deteriorate despite her prayers for healing. And as he listened to her speak, he noticed that every sentence was filled with descriptions of her symptoms, proclamations about how sick she felt, predictions about how her condition would probably worsen, declarations that she had always been weak and fragile. He pointed out to her that she was using her words to reinforce and magnify her illness, that she was giving testimony to sickness rather than health, that her speech was an ongoing negative affirmation, impressing itself into her subconscious mind with every utterance. He taught her to change her speech, to refuse to speak about her illness in negative terms, to instead speak words of health, strength, vitality, and perfect functioning, even when her physical symptoms suggested otherwise, because she needed to speak from the end, from the desired state, from the consciousness of health rather than from the condition of sickness. She found this difficult at first. Her ingrained habit was to complain, to report every discomfort, to bond with others over shared suffering. But as she persisted in disciplining her speech, speaking only words that affirmed her healing and wholeness, something remarkable began to happen. Not only did her physical condition begin to improve, but her entire mental and emotional state transformed. She felt more hopeful, more empowered, more aligned with the healing power within her. You must understand that your subconscious mind is listening to every word you speak. It is your most attentive audience, and it believes what you tell it. It accepts your word as law. It takes your declarations seriously and proceeds to manifest their equivalent in your experience. Therefore, begin today to speak only words that affirm what you desire. Refuse to give voice to fear, worry, lack, or limitation. Even if you must remain silent rather than speak negatively, and when you do speak, let your words be constructive, positive, healing, prospering. Because your words are decrees, they are commands to your subconscious mind, they are prophecies you are fulfilling through the very act of speaking them. The period just before sleep is the most powerful time for impressing your subconscious mind with the desires you wish to manifest. Because as you drift into sleep, your conscious mind, with all its doubts, objections, and limiting beliefs gradually releases its grip, and the door to your subconscious stands open and receptive, ready to accept whatever impressions you give it in those drowsy moments between waking and sleeping. This is why the last thoughts you think before sleep are of supreme importance, because these thoughts sink deeply into your subconscious mind without the interference of conscious resistance. They plant themselves in the fertile soil of your deeper mind, where they germinate and grow while you sleep, and your subconscious works throughout the night to bring them into manifestation. A man told Dr. Joseph Murphy that his sleep was troubled, filled with anxious dreams and frequent waking, and he would rise each morning feeling exhausted and dreading the day ahead. Dr. Murphy asked him what he typically thought about as he was falling asleep, and the man admitted that he would review all the problems of the day, worry about tomorrow's challenges, rehearse difficult conversations, and imagine all the things that could go wrong. Here was the source of his troubled sleep and difficult days. He was programming his subconscious mind with anxiety and fear in its most receptive state, essentially ordering his deeper mind to create more problems, more difficulties, more circumstances to worry about. Murphy taught him a new practice. As he prepared for sleep, he was to release the day completely. Forgive everyone, including himself, give thanks for all the good in his life, and then imagine his desired state with feeling. Whether that was a specific goal he wanted to achieve, or simply a general sense of peace, well-being, and harmony, and to fall asleep dwelling in that desired state, letting it be the last impression on his mind before unconsciousness. The man began this practice faithfully, and within days his sleep became more peaceful, his dreams more pleasant, and he began waking with a sense of anticipation rather than dread, And as the weeks passed, he noticed that his days became easier. Solutions appeared more readily. Opportunities opened. His entire life experience shifted because he had changed what he was impressing upon his subconscious mind in that crucial pre-sleep period. You have this same opportunity every single night, this golden moment when your subconscious is most impressionable, and you can use it wisely by filling your mind with thoughts of your desires fulfilled, with feelings of gratitude and peace, with images of the life you want to live. Or you can waste it by dwelling on problems, nursing grievances, and entertaining fears. The choice is always yours. The power is always available. The question is only whether you will use it consciously and constructively, or unconsciously and destructively. Persistence in your mental practice is not merely helpful or recommended, it is absolutely essential, because your subconscious mind must be convinced of the reality of your desire through repetition and consistency, through the faithful return again and again to the same mental state, the same affirming thoughts, the same visualized end, until that state becomes more familiar to your deeper mind than your current circumstances, until your desired reality feels more natural than your present reality. Many people practice manifestation techniques sporadically. They visualize their desires when they feel inspired. They affirm their good when they remember. They assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled only occasionally. And then they wonder why nothing changes, why their lives remain stuck in the same patterns, why their dreams never materialize. But the answer is simple. They have not impressed their subconscious mind deeply enough. They have not persisted long enough. They have not maintained their mental discipline consistently enough to override the old programming. The habitual thought patterns, the deep-seated beliefs that continue to create their current experience. A woman said to Dr. Joseph Murphy that she had tried manifestation techniques for a week or two and saw no results. So she concluded that the law did not work for her, that perhaps she was an exception, that maybe some people just were not meant to have what they desired. Dr. Murphy smiled and asked her if she would expect a seed planted in her garden to produce a full-grown plant within a week, if she would dig up that seed repeatedly to check if it was growing, if she would abandon the garden after 2 weeks because she did not yet see flowers blooming. She understood the analogy immediately. She had been impatient, inconsistent, faithless, digging up her mental seeds before they had time to germinate, abandoning her practice just when it needed to be strengthened. He taught her that persistence means continuing your mental work, regardless of appearances, maintaining your desired state in consciousness, even when circumstances seem to contradict it, returning to your visualization and affirmation daily, sometimes multiple times daily, until that state becomes impressed so deeply into your subconscious that manifestation becomes inevitable. She committed to a 90-day practice, deciding that she would faithfully assume the feeling of her wish fulfilled every morning and every night for 3 months, without wavering, without checking for results, without giving up. And she found that somewhere around the 6th week, something clicked. Her doubt dissolved. Her faith became unshakable. And shortly after that turning point, her manifestation began to appear in her experience. Not all at once, but gradually, naturally, as though the universe had simply been waiting for her to maintain her consciousness long enough for the physical world to catch up with her mental world. You must come to understand with absolute clarity that your outer world is always a perfect reflection of your inner world, that circumstances do not create consciousness, but consciousness creates circumstances, that you are not responding to your environment, but your environment is responding to you, to your habitual thoughts, your dominant feelings, your consistent mental states. This understanding is liberating because it means you are never at the mercy of external conditions. You are never a victim of circumstances. You are never powerless before the events and situations of your life, because all power resides in consciousness, in the realm of thought and feeling where you have complete dominion, complete authority, complete creative control. The moment you stop blaming your circumstances for how you think and feel, the moment you stop making excuses based on your past or your limitations or your difficulties, the moment you accept full responsibility for your consciousness and therefore for your experience. That is the moment you step into your power as a creator. That is the moment true transformation becomes possible. A man told Dr. Joseph Murphy that he was stuck in a dead-end job with a difficult boss, inadequate pay, and no prospects for advancement. And he felt trapped by these circumstances, unable to change his situation because he needed the income, had bills to pay, had responsibilities that prevented him from taking risks. Dr. Murphy listened with compassion, but then spoke a hard truth. The man was not trapped by his circumstances. He was trapped by his consciousness, by his belief that he was limited, by his acceptance of the current situation as inevitable, by his focus on all the reasons why change was impossible rather than on the possibilities that existed beyond his current vision. The man initially resisted this teaching, defending his position, explaining all the very real and practical reasons why he could not simply change his thinking and expect his situation to change. But Dr. Murphy persisted, asking him to conduct an experiment. For 30 days, regardless of how he felt or what his circumstances looked like, he would assume the mental state of someone who was valued, well paid, and working in a fulfilling position. He would live inwardly from that state. He would refuse to complain about his current job. He would give thanks for his perfect employment, even while the outer form had not yet changed. The man agreed reluctantly, and as he practiced this new consciousness, something unexpected happened. His attitude changed, which changed his behavior, which changed how others perceived him, which changed the opportunities that came his way. And before the 30 days were complete, he was approached about a position he had not even known existed, with better pay, better conditions, and better prospects. A position that matched exactly the consciousness he had been maintaining. This is the great secret. Change your consciousness, and your world must change to match it, because consciousness is cause, and circumstance is effect, never the reverse. The practice of feeling is the master key to all manifestation, because your subconscious mind responds not to your words alone, not to your visualizations alone, not to your affirmations alone, but to the feeling behind them, the emotional conviction, the sense of reality you bring to your mental images and declarations. You can repeat affirmations 1,000 times. You can visualize your desires in perfect detail. You can think positive thoughts from morning until night. But if there is no feeling accompanying these practices, if they are merely mechanical repetitions without emotional involvement, they will produce little or no result, because feeling is the language your subconscious understands. Feeling is what impresses the deeper mind. Feeling is what gives life and power to your thoughts and makes them creative. A woman said to Dr. Joseph Murphy that she had been affirming abundance for months, speaking declarations of prosperity dozens of times each day, yet her financial situation had not improved and in some ways had worsened. He asked her to affirm prosperity while he observed her, and as she spoke the words, he noticed her voice was flat, mechanical. Her body language conveyed doubt. Her eyes showed no conviction, and when he asked her how she felt as she spoke these affirmations, she admitted that she felt nothing, that the words seemed hollow and empty, that she was just going through the motions, hoping that somehow the repetition alone would work magic. He explained to her that affirmations without feeling are like seeds without water. They cannot germinate, they cannot grow, they remain dormant and lifeless, because the subconscious mind is moved by emotion, by the feeling of reality, by the sense that what you are declaring is true right now, in this moment. He taught her to imagine a scene that would naturally occur if she were prosperous. Perhaps opening her bank statement and seeing an abundant balance. Perhaps shopping without worry about prices. Perhaps feeling the relief and joy of financial freedom. And to stay with that scene until it generated genuine feeling in her, until she could feel the reality of it, until her body responded with the emotions that would accompany actual prosperity. She practiced this new approach, and the difference was immediate. When she brought feeling to her practice, when she felt wealthy even before the wealth appeared, her entire energy changed, her confidence grew, opportunities began to present themselves, and her financial situation began to transform. You must understand that feeling is the secret. Feeling is what bridges the gap between the invisible and the visible, between consciousness and manifestation, between desire and fulfillment. Therefore, never practice your visualization, affirmation, or assumption mechanically or half-heartedly. Always involve your emotions, always feel the reality of your desire, always generate the feeling that would accompany the actual possession of what you seek, because it is feeling that impresses the subconscious mind. It is feeling that activates the creative power within you. It is feeling that makes your thoughts into things. Every thought you think is either building up or tearing down, creating or destroying, moving you toward your desires or away from them. And there is no neutral ground, no middle position where your thoughts have no effect, because the mind is always creating, consciousness is always manifesting, and the only question is whether you are directing this creative process consciously toward what you want or allowing it to run unconsciously, creating what you do not want. The thoughts you habitually think become the beliefs you unconsciously hold, and the beliefs you unconsciously hold become the experiences you inevitably have. This is the progression from thought to manifestation, from inner to outer, from cause to effect. A man told Dr. Joseph Murphy that he was confused because sometimes his manifestation techniques seemed to work and sometimes they did not. Sometimes his affirmations produced results and sometimes they failed, and he wanted to know why the law was so inconsistent, why it worked for some desires and not for others. Dr. Murphy explained that the law is never inconsistent. The law is absolutely reliable, but the man's application of the law was inconsistent because while he was affirming his desires consciously for a few minutes each day, he was spending the rest of his waking hours thinking thoughts that contradicted those desires, entertaining doubts, indulging fears, accepting limitations, and the subconscious mind was responding to his dominant mental attitude, his habitual thought patterns, his consistent emotional states, not to the few minutes of affirmation that were contradicted by hours of opposing thoughts. He taught the man that successful manifestation requires more than a brief daily practice. It requires a transformation of consciousness, a change in habitual thinking, a new default mental state that remains consistent throughout the day. Because your life is created by your average thoughts, your typical mental atmosphere, your usual way of thinking and feeling, not by occasional positive thinking surrounded by chronic negative thinking. The man began to see that he needed to become vigilant, to watch his thoughts throughout the day, to immediately redirect any thought that moved him away from his desired state, back toward that state, to cultivate a new mental habit of assuming success rather than failure, possibility rather than limitation, abundance rather than lack. This is the work that is required. Not just a few minutes of visualization or affirmation, but a sustained commitment to maintaining a consciousness aligned with your desires, a persistent practice of choosing thoughts that serve you rather than thoughts that sabotage you, a dedication to thinking from your desired end, regardless of current circumstances. When you do this consistently, when you maintain your consciousness steadily in the direction of what you want, when you refuse to entertain thoughts that contradict your desires, then manifestation becomes not miraculous, but natural. Not occasional, but consistent. Not mysterious, but lawful. Because you are working with the law rather than against it, you are aligning your entire consciousness with your desires, rather than dividing your mental energy between wanting and doubting. Your past does not determine your future unless you insist on bringing your past into your present through memory. Regret, resentment, and identification with who you were rather than who you are becoming. The past exists only in your mind as memory. It has no power except the power you give it through your attention and emotional involvement, and the moment you cease to energize your past through repetitive thinking about it, through dwelling on old wounds, through rehearsing old failures, through maintaining old grievances, that moment your past loses its grip on you, and you become free to create a new future unburdened by old patterns. Many people are imprisoned not by their circumstances but by their memories, not by what is happening now but by what happened years ago. not by present reality, but by past interpretations of reality that they continue to replay in their minds like a worn recording. And as long as they keep playing that recording, as long as they keep identifying with their past self, they continue to create their future as a repetition of their past. A woman said to Dr. Joseph Murphy that she wanted to create a new life but felt haunted by her past mistakes, her previous failures, her old identity as someone who always struggled, and she did not know how to let go of this history that felt like such a fundamental part of who she was. He told her that she was confusing her essential self with her temporary experiences, mistaking the consciousness that had created her past for consciousness itself, believing that because she had thought and acted in certain ways before, she must continue to think and act that way forever. He explained that consciousness is fluid, changeable, responsive to intention, and that she could choose right now to identify with a new version of herself, to claim a new identity, and to assume a new state of consciousness that had nothing to do with her past. And as she maintained this new consciousness, her past would become irrelevant, powerless, unable to influence her present or determine her future. She began the practice of refusing to speak about her past in negative terms, declining to revisit old wounds in conversation, resisting the urge to justify her current limitations by reference to past difficulties, and instead speaking and thinking as though she were already the person she wished to become, already free from the patterns that had constrained her, already living from her desired state. This was difficult at first because her mind wanted to return to familiar patterns, to old stories, to the comfort of known identities, even when those identities were painful. But she persisted, and gradually she noticed that her past was fading, losing its emotional charge, becoming simply events that had happened to someone who was no longer her. And in the space created by releasing her past, a new self emerged. A self defined not by history but by intention. Not by what had been, but by what was being consciously created in each moment. You have this same freedom right now. You can choose to stop dragging your past into your present. You can choose to release old identities and claim new ones. You can choose to let your history be simply history rather than prophecy. There is infinite intelligence within you that knows exactly how to manifest your desires, that understands the intricate pathways by which invisible thoughts become visible things, that orchestrates circumstances and synchronizes events with perfect precision. And you do not need to know how your desires will manifest. You do not need to figure out the means or plan the method or control the process. You need only to impress your desire upon your subconscious mind with clarity and feeling, and then trust that the how will be taken care of by this infinite intelligence that is far wiser than your conscious mind could ever be. One of the greatest mistakes people make in their manifestation practice is trying to dictate to the universe exactly how their desires must manifest, limiting the infinite possibilities to the few methods they can consciously imagine, attempting to control and manipulate circumstances rather than allowing the natural unfoldment of law to bring their desires to pass in ways they could not have orchestrated themselves. A man told Dr. Joseph Murphy that he wanted to manifest financial abundance but could not see any possible way for this to happen, given his current situation, his lack of high-paying job opportunities, his absence of wealthy connections, his limited resources and skills. And because he could not imagine how abundance could come to him, he felt his desire was impossible and his manifestation practice was futile. Dr. Murphy explained to him that his job was not to figure out how. His job was simply to assume the consciousness of abundance, to live mentally in the state of financial freedom, to feel wealthy regardless of current circumstances, and to trust that the subconscious mind, which is connected to infinite intelligence, would find ways to manifest his desire that his limited conscious mind could never conceive. He told the man that abundance might come through channels he had not considered, through opportunities he could not currently see, through a sequence of events that would seem like coincidence, but would actually be the precise orchestration of law responding to his consciousness. The man decided to trust this teaching, to stop trying to figure out how, and instead focus solely on maintaining the feeling of abundance. And as he did so, a series of unexpected events unfolded. A friend mentioned an investment opportunity he would normally have dismissed. That investment performed beyond all reasonable expectation. Someone owed him a debt he had forgotten about and suddenly repaid it. A skill he had not monetized before suddenly became valuable in a new market, and his financial situation transformed through means he could never have planned or predicted. This is how the law works. You define the end, the what you desire, and you maintain consciousness of that end being fulfilled. But you leave the how to infinite intelligence. You trust the process. You remain open to unexpected pathways. You allow your good to come to you through whatever channels the universe chooses to use, knowing that these channels will always be perfect, always be timely, always be appropriate to your consciousness. The emotions of doubt, fear, and worry are not merely uncomfortable feelings to be endured. They are active forces that create in your experience the very things you wish to avoid. Because when you doubt, you are affirming impossibility. When you fear, you are expecting harm. When you worry, you are rehearsing disaster. And your subconscious mind, responding faithfully to these emotional declarations, proceeds to manifest their equivalent in your outer world. You cannot hold fear and faith simultaneously. You cannot doubt and believe at the same time. You cannot worry and trust in the same moment. You must choose which consciousness you will maintain, which emotional state you will dwell in, which mental atmosphere you will cultivate. Because this choice determines what you create in your life. A woman said to Dr. Joseph Murphy that she was terrified of losing her job, that every day she went to work feeling anxious and insecure, imagining scenarios where she would be laid off, rehearsing in her mind how devastating that would be, worrying constantly about her financial survival if unemployment occurred. And she was convinced that her fear was justified given the unstable economy and uncertain times. Dr. Murphy asked her a penetrating question. What do you think all this fear and worry is creating in your experience? She had never considered this. She thought her fear was simply a natural response to a threatening situation. But he helped her see that her fear was actually attracting and creating the very situation she feared. That by dwelling mentally and emotionally in the state of being unemployed and afraid, she was impressing upon her subconscious mind instructions to manifest that reality. She was literally praying for what she did not want through the negative emotional conviction she maintained day after day. He taught her that she must choose faith over fear, that she must deliberately turn her attention away from imagined disaster toward imagined security, that she must replace worry with trust, anxiety with peace, fearful expectations with confident ones, and this was not denial or naive optimism, but rather wise use of mental law, conscious direction of creative power. She committed to this practice, and whenever fear arose, she would immediately redirect her mind to thoughts of security, of being valued at work, of having multiple opportunities available to her, of being financially safe and provided for. And as she persisted in maintaining this consciousness despite her initial fear, something remarkable happened. Not only did she not lose her job, but her performance improved because she was no longer paralyzed by anxiety. Her relationships at work improved because she was no longer projecting insecurity. And eventually, she was promoted, proving that consciousness of security creates security, while consciousness of insecurity creates insecurity, regardless of external economic conditions or company circumstances. The present moment is the only point of power you will ever have, because the past is gone and exists only as memory in your mind. The future has not yet arrived and exists only as imagination in your consciousness, but this present moment, this eternal now, this is where all creation happens. This is where you impress your subconscious mind. This is where you choose the thoughts that will become your tomorrow. Many people waste their power by living mentally in the past, replaying old scenes, nursing old wounds, or by living mentally in the future, anxiously anticipating what might happen, fearfully imagining potential problems. And in doing so, they miss the present moment where their creative power actually resides, where their consciousness is actually operating, where their manifestation is actually occurring. A man told Dr. Joseph Murphy that he was always anxious about the future, constantly planning and preparing for potential disasters, unable to relax in the present because his mind was perpetually racing ahead to tomorrow's problems, next week's challenges, next year's uncertainties. And this chronic anxiety was exhausting him, robbing him of peace, preventing him from enjoying his life, even when circumstances were actually good in the present moment. Joseph Murphy explained to him that this future-focused anxiety was not only making him miserable now, but was actually creating the problems he feared, because by dwelling emotionally in anxious anticipation of difficulties, he was impressing his subconscious mind with instructions to create those difficulties. He was essentially ordering his tomorrow to match his fearful imaginings about tomorrow. He taught the man a simple but profound practice. Whenever his mind raced into the future with worry, he was to gently bring it back to the present moment, to what was actually happening right now, to the breath moving in and out of his body, to the sensations he was experiencing, to the task immediately at hand, and from this present moment awareness, he was to declare that infinite intelligence was taking care of his future, that all his needs were being met, that he was guided and protected and provided for. The man practiced this present moment awareness, combined with trust in the law, and gradually his anxiety diminished, his peace increased, his sleep improved, his relationships deepened because he was actually present with people rather than mentally elsewhere. And ironically, his future began to unfold more smoothly because he was no longer contaminating it with fearful projections, but allowing it to be created by his peaceful, trusting present moment consciousness. You must understand that every moment you spend worrying about the future is a moment of creative power wasted, a moment where you could be impressing your subconscious with positive expectations, but instead are impressing it with negative ones, a moment where you could be living in faith, but instead are living in fear. Therefore, make a commitment to live in the present moment, to be here now, to focus your attention on what is directly before you, and when you do think about the future, think about it with faith and positive expectation, rather than with fear and worry, knowing that your future is being created by your present consciousness, by the thoughts you think now, by the feelings you feel now, and by the mental state you maintain now. The principle of giving and receiving is one of the great laws of life that, when understood and applied, transforms your relationship with abundance. Because the universe operates on the principle of circulation, of flow, of continuous movement, and when you give freely, generously, joyfully, you set in motion a law that ensures you receive in even greater measure, not necessarily from the same source to which you gave, but from the infinite reservoir of supply that responds to your consciousness of abundance. Many people approach giving from a consciousness of lack, believing that if they give, they will have less, that they must hoard and protect what they have, that generosity is dangerous when resources are limited, but this consciousness of lack creates more lack. This fearful holding on blocks the flow of good into their lives. This stinginess signals to the subconscious mind that there is not enough, and therefore the subconscious creates experiences of not enough. A woman said to Dr. Joseph Murphy that she wanted to practice tithing and generous giving but felt she could not afford it, that she barely had enough to meet her own needs, that it would be irresponsible to give money away when she had bills to pay and debts to settle, and she wondered how she could ever experience abundance if she gave away the little she had. Dr. Joseph Murphy explained to her that she had the principle backwards, that she was waiting to feel abundant before giving, when actually giving is what creates the consciousness of abundance, that the act of giving declares to your subconscious mind that you have more than enough, that you are prosperous, that you trust in the infinite supply, and this consciousness of abundance impressed upon the subconscious mind attracts more abundance into your experience. He encouraged her to begin giving even small amounts, to tithe a percentage of her income, no matter how small that income was, to give with joy rather than reluctance, to give as an act of faith in the law of circulation, and to watch what happened as she established this new pattern. She began the practice nervously, setting aside 10% of every dollar that came to her and giving it where she felt spiritually fed, where she received value, where she wanted to see good work continue in the world. And at first it felt frightening, felt like she was making her situation worse. But she persisted based on faith in the principle Dr. Murphy had taught her. Within weeks, she noticed a shift. Unexpected money came to her from forgotten sources. People repaid old debts. New income opportunities appeared. Her overall financial situation began to improve, not because she was holding on tighter, but because she was letting go. Not because she was hoarding, but because she was circulating. Not because she was operating from lack, but because she was operating from abundance. This is the paradox of giving. The more you give from a consciousness of abundance, the more you receive. Because giving is a declaration of faith, an affirmation of plenty, a signal to your subconscious mind that you are prosperous. And your subconscious responds by creating experiences that match this consciousness of prosperity. You stand, now, at the end of these teachings, with the knowledge that can transform your life completely if you will apply it consistently, faithfully, persistently, understanding that knowledge alone changes nothing, but knowledge applied changes everything. That intellectual understanding of these principles is worthless unless it translates into actual practice, into daily discipline, to moment-by-moment consciousness of the creative power within you. The question is not whether these principles work, because they are working in your life right now, have always been working, will always be working. The question is whether you will work them consciously or continue to work them unconsciously. Whether you will direct your creative power toward what you desire or continue to allow it to create by default the things you do not desire. A man told Dr. Joseph Murphy that he understood all these teachings intellectually, that they made perfect sense to him, that he believed they were true, but he found it difficult to maintain the discipline of applying them consistently in his daily life, and he wondered if understanding was enough, if belief was sufficient, if intellectual agreement would produce results even without rigorous practice. Dr. Murphy told him plainly that understanding without application is like owning a magnificent car but never turning on the engine, like having access to a fortune but never making a withdrawal, like possessing a master key but never using it to open the door. Because the principles of manifestation require more than belief. They require practice. They require consistent application. They require the persistent maintenance of consciousness aligned with desire, regardless of contrary appearances. He explained that the man would need to make a commitment, a decision right now to practice these principles every single day, to guard his thoughts as carefully as he would guard a priceless treasure, to assume the feeling of his wish fulfilled, not occasionally, but habitually, to speak only words that affirm his desires, to give thanks before manifestation appears, to persist through doubt and delay and apparent contradiction, because this is the price of transformation, this is the cost of changing your life. This is what is required to impress your subconscious mind deeply enough that your outer world must change to reflect your inner world. The power to change your life today, right now, in this very moment, is not somewhere outside you waiting to be found. It is within you waiting to be used. It is your own consciousness, your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own imagination, your own words, your own assumptions about yourself and your world. And when you take control of these inner faculties, when you direct them consciously toward your desires, when you maintain them steadily regardless of circumstances, then you discover that you are not a victim of life but a creator of life, not subject to conditions but the cause of conditions, not powerless before your circumstances but powerful beyond measure, to change them through the simple yet profound act of changing your consciousness. And this change, this transformation, this manifestation of your desires can begin today, must begin today, and will begin today if you simply decide that it will and commit yourself to the practice of these eternal principles that have created worlds and can certainly create the life you desire to live.